You came in 1961?
I came in 1961 for 1 year before going to law school, and fell in love with it, and I left to go do my graduate work at the University of Wisconsin in 1966-67, but otherwise was here, and I was made headmaster in 1972. In my opening talk to the faculty, actually, when I became headmaster, I said that I wanted to take the arts and make them equal to athletics and academics, and that was much of the thrust of what we did in the early years of my time. That's Arts and Humanities building was built. I mean, that we had Potter as an art teacher, and we had one person in theater, but he also taught 4 sections of English, so he put on 2 plays a year instead of coaching on sports. I actually had been a member of the committee that recommended we go co-ed, and we voted it as a faculty, and trustees agreed to do it, and we were actually, along with Andover and St. Paul's, the first schools to go co-ed in our own right. But when we became co-ed, there was just an explosion of interest in the arts.
Right.
The bottom half of an all-male class was replaced by girls who were adventuresome, wanting to come here, who were bright. So the whole quality of the academic standards of the school rose almost instantaneously. Yeah, we had conduct grades. You got them for missing classes. You got them for messy room. If your bed wasn't made by 8 o'clock, the faculty duty.
By 8 o'clock?
Yeah, the faculty members were responsible for going to every student's room before first period class to make sure the bed was made. And I mean made. It wasn't, just pulled up.
Check the corners?
Yeah. So much of that kind of restriction left at my time. The schedule changes, the introduction of the arts, just the spirit of the place changed so dramatically. I think one of the, you asked earlier about things that we did in my time. There were many things, but one of the things that has made a tremendous amount of difference in the student-faculty relations at Taft over 40 years is the MON meetings, where you sit here with the headmaster and whoever else might come, but usually with the headmaster, and you talk about, you're allowed on the inside of what's going on at Taft, and it makes it more of all of us together than
separately.
Yeah. And that was actually another thing that we did early in my time, is we made the discipline committee faculty-student disciplinary.
That's another great.
Yeah, because before, when I first came here, it was the headmaster and 6 members of the faculty made all decisions. And you had no insight in it from the student point of view. So the same thing with the honor corps. One of the big difference would have been that do you know where the Wade House is? Okay. You know where the alumni house used to be before they moved?
On Sped Street.
Yeah. And there's a brick building there. That was the senior smoking house. It was called the Wade House. And all the students just looked forward so much to being seniors when they could go there and smoke. And I can't tell you how many people I met in my latter years as headmaster who said that, God, I love Taft, but there's one thing I'm still mad about. You gave privilege of smoking to us, and we all started. And there were kids that wouldn't play sports because they wanted to smoke. Can you imagine that? And at night, which the duty for nighttime study hall, where all students in lower school were there together, was taken by the faculty members who lived outside the dorm. And there used to be unbelievable pranks played in there. The best one would always be, they'd set off an alarm clock in a random desk where the kid wasn't there, or they'd set it off in your desk because they were trying to embarrass you. And the faculty member would have to get up from this chair and go walk around and locate the alarm clock, and then whoever did it would be in substantial difficulty. Of course, we also had school assembly, just as you do, twice a week, Wednesday and Saturday. School assembly was actually called job assembly, because if we refer back to the jobs in the beginning of the day, if you cut your job, you had to stand up in school assembly and be identified for not having done what you were supposed to do.
Really?
Yeah, Mr. Wandel, who you probably didn't know, but he came to be very popular in his class because he loved Taft, but he also didn't like some of the things about it. So he became the counselor to the guys that thought about running away. And on a number of occasions, he actually hired a cab, took the guys to Waterbury, put them on the train, and helped them leave. They ran away. The amusing vignette on the school when I first got here was a man named Reed. Dr. Edwin Reed was the school physician. And he was trained, this is an all-boys school, and he was trained as a gynecologist. He wanted to go on a program called What's My Line, where you guess what his profession is. That's what they did.
Yeah.
And nobody would allow him to go because we didn't want the Hotchkiss guys to know that the school was a gynecologist. Isn't that amazing?
That is amazing. That's
Yeah.
hilarious.
I'll tell you a great story about the end of church stuff. 1968, the New York Jets are playing the Baltimore Colts in the Super Bowl on the first Sunday after we came back to school in the winter. The Super Bowl was much earlier in those days. And at that time, the Super Bowl started at 5 o'clock. John Estey, who was my predecessor, invited the chaplain at Smith College, or maybe not Smith College, maybe just from that area, to come down and speak. So the guy gets up to speak, the reverend, I forgot what his name was, and he spoke forever. And finally, John Estey got up to go and tap him on the shoulder because he said, school dinner is at 6:15, you've got to wrap this up. Just as he went to put his hand on his shoulder, the whole audience went, "Hooray!" He thought it was because he was ending the guy's speech. The reason was the Jets had just scored a touchdown. Everybody had their transistor. That was the end of required church. School meeting the next day, which job assembly the next day, give us all a bit of a lecture about that. Because some of the faculty also cheered. And he hadn't realized exactly what the cause was. These were all classrooms. There were two classrooms, one there and one here.
Yeah. Were there wings? Was there a history wing and English wing?
Yeah, history and English were where they are still.
Okay.
This was a classroom.
Right.
Mr. Prue's office was Joe Cunningham, who was the director of admissions. Okay. There was only one person in admissions.
Right. He did all the interviews, read all the applications.
Right, and by the way, until Mr. Waddell came, the standard way that people were shown around was a young person on the faculty walked them around and gave them the tour.
Not a student.
Not a student. And one of the things Ferdy did for us was to, he introduced students into the process, which was revolutionary. This was the head of the English department. Check this out. This man was the head of the English department. He was the academic dean, and he was the dean of faculty. And
at once?
And he was the college placement person. He did all those jobs, Bill Sullivan. He was the smartest man I ever knew. This floor here is the floor of the school's first gym.
Wow.
This was the basketball court.
No way.
Yeah. So this was the other end.
This is part of the gym.
The combination of this space going this way was the original gym. And the baskets were here.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Beautiful stuff.
It's a shorter walk.
Oh yeah. So it used to walk down the hall and go right through the door there and go to the basketball games. Yeah.
When did this theater come around?
It was all done the same year. See, these are the same. That's the same floor coming on down.
Oh right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
That is amazing.
Yeah. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
No one, I'm sure.
Nobody knows that. So what's interesting now is that you've now left right here
Right.
the original school gym. And we're now in a gym. This used to be air in a basketball court. There was no floor here. And this is where the so-called new gym, which was built in 1957, was. So when we gutted this and put all this in here, we put in a second floor and created all the space. the schools.
This was in '86 as well, or
Yes, yeah, it was all one, it was the first major building project of my time. Took this all over
Yeah.
when we built the original Crookshank building up there.
yeah.
We built that first to
When
free
was
up
that built?
81 or 2.
Okay.
So that was the first sort of domino
Right.
that allowed us then to build this.
To open this up. Right?
Yeah. And make this into what it is. This area we're in now
Yeah.
was the locker rooms.
No way.
And where the music thing is in there was where the shower is. Down here is where the wrestling, this here was where wrestling was,
Okay.
because there was no space up above. And where the arts, for the photography, this area here,
Yeah, that's still
yeah, that's still
photos down
yeah.
there, and then these are music practice.
Okay, but from here over
Right.
was a long, narrow hallway, which is where we had indoor puck shooting, so the hockey players could practice the hockey shooting in the winter, in other seasons.
Wow.
Okay, is that,
It's amazing. It's amazing.
this was the school barber shop.
No way. There was a barber shop. in
Yes.
school. That's brilliant.
And not only was there a barber shop, but if Dougie, the dean of students,
All right.
thought your hair was too long, he'd send you down to the barber right away.
Was it free? Was it?
No, you got to charge went home. But if the barber was here at least twice a week for a whole day.
Could you get a shave too?
Sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
And the
brilliant.
headmaster's secretary once told me that to get a haircut, she thought my hair was too long. I mean,
Told you?
well, I had more hair in those days. The school store was divided in half. And this half over here was where I taught
Really?
my first year.
Did you teach English?
I taught English and history. My classroom was back over there. The entrance to this classroom was here, and the entrance to the other classroom was over there.
I think the split ran right about here to
Yeah.
divide the rooms.
Right. But if I taught down here, I don't think anybody ever knew where the heck I was my whole first year. Nobody ever visited me or anything else.
That's true of all first-year
I
teachers.
probably
yeah.
I would have been fired if they'd known what was happening. So this was rows of seats. And the master sat at his desk, which was elevated.
Not in the balcony?
No, right here. Okay?
Yeah.
And surveyed the boys, studied it. There's a door back there in the corner.
ISP.
Leads to the ISP, and that's where the headmaster would periodically appear and watch to see how you were doing, managing these unruly characters. It was terrifying. Before they built Bingham, Mr. Taft used to come and address the students from up there.
Okay. And so that door that's been closed off now.
But before the infirmary was there, you know what that was?
No.
The school laundry.
There's a school laundry.
Yeah, so you don't have to send your...
The barber and the laundry service.
Yeah. So, and Congdon House was where the maids lived, because in the old days there were maids for that did maid service in the dorms and around about. And
So so the kids didn't have to make their own beds?
Yes,
the
they
maids made
did.
them?
They just came in, they picked up the trash and that sort of stuff. But
Okay.
the maids were gone by 1961 when I got here.
Okay.
So the job program came in and it's before, and so this building was largely empty also.
Right.
So we were able to take, first it became a boys' home, and then it became a girls' home. At one point in the time I was here, before Blue was built, the pond came further down this way.
Right.
Horsetaff built the pond in order to have 3 hockey rinks.
Is that why?
Yeah. When you look at the library from up on the hill,
Right.
it looks a little bit like that's an addition to this building.
Yeah. It's the other way.
It's the other way. And we built the library and the big reading room and all of this in order to hide the library, in order to make it look like it's part of the cohesive part of the town here. When I first came here, the whole of the golf course was right about where the Centennial Archway is.
Really? And that's the golf course is
Yeah,
it's still.
there was a hole definitely in the middle of Crookshank. You
Yeah.
played down from the golf course to Crookshank, so it's a much more muscular and dynamic place
Right.
than the buttoned up one, which was a good school, but just very different. And some of the best teachers I ever saw were here when I first got here. Ed Douglas was a great mathematician. Bill Sullivan, the guy I told you about that did everything, was the best teacher I ever saw. I mean, it's
In
just
English, right?
unbelievable. They were just superb teachers. Harry Stearns in history was a great group.
Yeah.
So,
And the gym thing, I still can't wrap my mind around that. But
I'll tell you the story of how that happened, because it's a piece of Taft history that should be known. When I was a teacher and chairman of the history department and assistant headmaster, I taught a young man named Will Miller. And I got to know him well. He had an interesting mind, and we became close, and we stayed close while he was at Yale.
Right.
So, and he loved architecture. So, in Will's junior year at Yale, I had him up for lunch just to get caught up, and we walked the campus, and we went into the old gyms, and we got up on the stands in the new basketball court and looked out over the pond. And both of us said at the same time, this is a view that should be seen, and it's never seen in the gym, because you don't want a lot of light in the gym. And then we walked around by the science building, and we looked back at that shoebox and said, we need to gut it and make it into something different. And so we took a look at what we needed to do in terms of art, humanities, and then we realized we had to build a building somewhere for the sports. So that's when we built Crookshank. But that one day, that visit, was the first step of the series of changes that we made. And he then subsequently went on the board and was chairman of the Long Range Planning Committee. And he has as much to do with the architectural beauty of this place as anybody. I mean, it's his gift to us is enormous. So,
That's great. Thank you so much. I really
yeah.